So let's get started without any further ado. And I will try to show all the key steps on this. I got a piece of Ipe ripped down to about 3.5 inches in width, and it's about 30 inches length, and that will make me a 10-inch bowl, more or less. So I'm gonna take that and cut it up in the staves. The idea on this is I want to make a 12 segment bowl. So let me bring you into the markings of my table or my sled. Now I know some of you have seen the sled when I was making it. It really is a good sled. It's a true sled. You know, this type of segment turning is probably you're gonna have to fudge it a little bit, because you're working with two angles. You work on a blade angle and you work on the mito angle. The mito angle is pretty good. I know that for a fact. So what I got here is I've got markings for different wall pitches and different amount of staves: 8, 12, and 16s. The wall angles can be done in 60 degrees, 45, or 30, and 30 being pretty much upright. And I got the same settings for those on the 3 groups. So this one is the 8 segment group, 12 segment, and 16 segment. I am going to make it out of the 12 segment group. 12 segment group, I want to do a 45 degree wall on this. So I'm going basically with this line right here, and what I do is I just bring my sled right up to my colored track on that particular piece, right on the line, and the angle for that is 10.7. I got the degrees marked over there as well. On the top, I got all the different degrees marked. So I'm on the 10.7, 10, 11, and that line right there, that end of that green marker, is 10.7. And that's the beauty about this jig. Once I set it up and it's true, then it's a matter of just bringing it up all the time to that. Blade is asking for it to be 10.5. I got my blade angled to 10.5. The sled has a nice, easy, controllable stop, and it's pretty accurate once I set it up. Now, I'm not doing mathematics to tell you exactly how big of a stave you need to make a 9 or 10 inch bowl, because to me it doesn't matter if it comes out 9 or comes out 10, but you can do the calculations if you need to. So set up the piece, and the first cut that we make is waste. So bring it through, eliminate that piece, and I'll show you the next step. Okay. I want to stop at 1/4 of the total amount, which in this case, a quarter of 12 is of course 3. And I want to do a test fit to see how they fit, how are my angles, are they going to be good enough to put this together and come up with 12, to come up pretty true with the piece. Let me show you what I do for that. I made a jig. It's 90 degrees, perfect 90, square this way, and perfect 90, of course, to the bottom as well. So it's 90 degrees inside, 90 degrees on the bottom walls. Set it up. So basically it's a quarter of a square, or a quarter of a box. If I take these 3 staves that I got made up and set them up in here, it's a little awkward. It's a little awkward, but it can be done. And of course, the more staves you have, the more awkward it becomes. But you set these 3 up. You set them up edge to edge, all the way through, and you lean them in a way that they meet up both the bottom okay. The goal is for them to sit flat on the bottom like that. If they are sitting as well flat against your side walls, which they look pretty good, and your seams are nice and tight, you have a pretty good startup for your bowl. You are still going to most likely have to true up the 2 halves in your disc sander, because any little bit that's off on here, which you can't even tell with just 3, gets multiplied, magnified by the time you get all 12 together. So by the time you get all 12 together, you might be a couple of thousandths of an off, and you'll have to make a slight adjustment. But this is how you establish that you are not too far off from your goal on where you need it to be. So seeing that that's good, and I don't have a problem with that, I can continue and cut up my next 9 of them. Now, one thing about this jig, you notice that I'm not doing clamping. Because the angle of my fence, the stop being low on the back end, automatically when I cut something, it's natural form. And I'm wide on the top, narrow on the bottom. The natural thing for it to do is fall away from the blade all the time. So I'm going to continue. So here's my 12 pieces, and I still ended up with an 8-inch left over from this Ipe. The next thing that I want to do, because I don't want to end up with just a brown bowl, I want to do something that will do a little bit of an accent to it and highlight. So I'm going to take out my fence, my jig out of the way. And I'm going to rip up a small piece of maple. Chew up my blade to 0. And I made a little jig. But you can do it up, the rip up against the fence. Lower the blade, of course. That's good. And basically, I made a stop that I can run in my guides and give me the distance that I want, how thick of a piece I want, basically. And let's say right there, 1/8 of an inch, more or less. I don't think I can go any less than that. Tighten it up, and that way I can do a stop. It gives me a stop on the back side of the fence and repeated cuts to that size all the time. So I use that for this over here, or I use it on the bandsaw. I use that jig on both saws. Cutting small pieces, make sure you use a push stick and keep equal pressure on it. And I gotta cut them up enough to make 12 of these staves. So I made up 12 spaces to go in between and to give me a little bit of a white in between the dark brown, and that makes a huge difference. Let me see if I can give you a good way of putting these together. From my understanding, you do just make sure you got coverage and you rub it together. And all you want is a little bit of a bead of glue coming through on this. Very little. So, again, rub it. And I'll probably put it to the outside like that. Well, I think I want to show you this without sanding yet. You can see my two halves right here, but they don't look too bad at all. The gap looks to be pretty even all the way in, just a hair opened up on the inside. So that is not bad at all. So this is what we end up with once we put a piece together before sanding. But anyway, and with that done, I can assemble another one, which is only 8 segments on this one, but 60 or 30 degrees upright. So this one is going to be fairly steep, where the other one is a little shallower at 45, and then the last option that I have on the jig is 30 degrees, which is flared out quite a bit. It's nice if you want to do a return for a lid or shallower bowl. I actually like the way it looks, the way it works when I'm using it more as a top of a bowl, the return, because it just gives you a little bit of a return over there. And if you do something with a diamond in between the staves or in the middle, that's a completely different animal. Well, I got my two halves put together. It's been 15 minutes more or less since I glued these quarters, and just now I just put these two pieces together, and they're sitting nice and flat on the table, and that's a good indication. And I just got them up against the fence it's really not doing much, but it's better than just being out in the open. I can see that it follows nice and true against the edge of the fence, there, here. So I think that it's a good inclination that once I put this one together, it's probably not going to need any sanding on the disc sander. Okay, I am back again. This piece has been here for an hour or so, so it's had a little bit of time to dry up. Not completely cured, but dry. Dry enough for the touch. Now, when this happens like this, it really is luck more than anything else. But the joints on here are really tight, pretty tight considering this just came off the saw and not made any adjustments to it. So this one is ready for me to rub the other two pieces, but before doing that I'm still going to pass it up very lightly on the disc sander. Just want to make sure that I don't have any difference whatsoever on one or the other. And all I do is rub it one time and leave it alone. You can see where it took off a little bit on this edge. That's good. So here's my two adjoining pieces ready to go, and leave this one dry up. The other one is dry as well and ready to go to the next step. So we'll be doing that next. Just enough to put a little bit of pressure on the sides, and this one will be ready in a few hours, and we'll make a nice looking bowl. Now the next step that I have to do is, once it dries up, is to flatten up this lightly on my disc sander. So this one is ready also to be glued in both halves, and again this one is pretty true. The almost no gap, I would say no gap, so I'm not even going to pass this one on the sander because this wood is so hard anyway that the sander would most likely probably round off the edges on me. So here's my last two pieces of wood for this. And this will have to stay under pressure for a little bit. But between the time I started this and now, it's probably been 4 hours. That is doing a little bit, stopping, going inside, responding to some emails, and then coming back. So not consistent. As a matter of fact, far from being straight time. But anyway, that's all I want to do is bring this up. These tapes can stick out a little bit. It doesn't matter. Right now, all I'm looking for is to make sure that these two halves are perfectly flat with each other. Like I said, you can do this with an elastic as well, and elastic seems to work probably better than this. Get it there and reline it up. No big deal if it shifts on you a little bit. You got time. The glue, of course, makes it slippery anyway. But I believe that to be pretty good. I'm going to bring it around the outside perimeter. This will keep it from sliding. And there we go. Leave this alone for a little bit, and then that will hold it. We don't need a lot of pressure. We just need to make sure that they're tight. And I believe this looks to be really good. That's my seam, and that's my other seam right there, and that's what I need. So I'll be back with this piece in about half an hour, 45 minutes. Let these two halves go, and this one will be ready as well during that time. So during that time I'll be able to work too. Now meanwhile, I could have been making more of these and doing pre-assemblies if that's what I wanted to do. Even if you just do them in pairs and leave pairs alone, or in threes and leave those alone. Later on, once you have yourself established, unless you're only going to do one, and that's normally what I do. So I'm just showing you this is a technique where you can get ahead and how this can be productive. But you know, I do one and that's it. I don't want to do another one. But you would keep this going on a rotation, and if this was your style turning, or something you decided you liked doing more so than natural wood bowls or anything like that, then you would be productive. in fabricating these, and you could do multiple in one day, because once you get past this point and they're dry, you know, it's a matter of setting them up on a faceplate and start shaping them. There's a few steps still in between, but again, any glue time that you would have on this one, you would jump up to the next one and do that prep, and so on and so forth, and you would have 3, 4 of these, 5 of these, whatever, at different points of its dry stage. So once one would dry, you would be ready for the next step, and so on and so forth, and keep it going. In between again, you would hit your table saw, make some more staves, and you would keep the process going in a way that you felt you were being productive with this type of turning. Now, any type of segmented turning, is going to have a time in glue, whether if it's rings or this. The only thing is, on rings, it's a little bit faster than this, because you can put a whole ring together, and after it's being cut up, you can put a band of tape and zip it through and let it to the side and let it dry up. Then it's just a matter of truing up the face, and you do that right on your lathe. You got one side that's flat, you attach it, and you just keep building up. So regular rings are a little bit quicker than this, but this is a different type of turning. So with something that's high profile like that, and you take one with a 30 degree, this is 45, but with the 30, and you use it as the top, it gives you a nice vessel, per se. You know, if you wanted to do something like that. That's not what this is for. These are 2 individual bowls. But the flatter ones at 30 degrees would look really nice on this, because you would enclose the top. So you would true this up, put that other ring in there, go in there and just hollow out the inside of the top lid and shape the very top the way you want it. Now on this one, I know, because I want to show you different things that I do. I want to make a very special bottom for this, and I'll show you the jig that I got for it. You'll have to stay tuned and see the end results on this. So I got an 8 segment and a 12 segment, almost ready to go in the lathe. Be back.